Okay, great. Thanks for that, Tammy, and I'm sure you can share more of it about that in due course if you wish to. The topic I wanted to have a bit of a discussion about, which I've flagged in the group, was internal dialogue, because all of us have internal dialogue, and people we work with often have rampant internal dialogue, right? And through some of my transcripts, you will have come across the concept that every aspect of ourselves has its own internal dialogue. It's like every behavior is that structural dynamic amalgam of visuals, auditory, kinesthetics, and the other sensory systems. So there's some internal dialogue that's part of every experience, including disease, including behaviors, including emotions, and so on and so forth. And what I discovered over time, that some people think that all that internal dialogue is their conscious mind. It's not. Most of the internal dialogue is the programs that are running. They're coming to the surface as an SOS, as John Grinder says, a spontaneously occurring signal. So the system is signaling through internal dialogue of that particular aspect that needs attention. And so the trick, and I said to one person working with me, she was really struggling with all this internal dialogue. And I said to her, you know, all that internal dialogue is not your conscious mind. And she goes, huh? And something clicked, because from that moment on, things shifted. So what was useful for her is to realize that internal dialogue is, it's like some people call it the monkey mind, which, with apologies to monkeys, it's all the aspects of unresolvedness will have some aspect of internal dialogue. Some people will be signaled through internal dialogue, maybe that more than they are through emotions, or maybe more than they are through physical diseases or symptoms. It just depends on which way it comes to the surface. So the trick for those of us who have a lot of internal dialogue is starting to know the difference between conscious ego mind's internal dialogue and all the rest of the internal dialogue. And one of the differences that to me is the most meaningful is the conscious mind's internal dialogue is that which is intentional. That's which we choose to use by conscious intention when we ask ourselves a question, when we give ourselves a pat on the back, say good, loving things to ourselves, or whatever. And an example of that, of course, is in my transcript of how I dealt with my chronic anxiety state, where my conscious ego mind's internal dialogued with the internal dialogue of my chronic anxiety state. So like there's part of me befriending another part of me. So two different aspects of different internal dialogue. Now, if you're very astute and very acute in noticing different submodalities, each internal dialogue will be slightly different in tone, volume, timbre, or pitch, all those sorts of things. But mostly it's that conscious intention for the conscious mind's internal dialogue, dialoguing with intention with whatever comes to the surface. And of course, in the alignment process, when we start off with the resources, we're just inviting the conscious internal dialogue to simply wait quietly in the center to notice how whatever comes to awareness. Now, mostly that awareness is visual or kinesthetic, and occasionally it's an auditory. Sometimes it's smell or taste. But by inviting it to wait quietly in the center, it invites the internal dialogue, all the other internal dialogues to simply just go quiet and allow the awareness to come of that particular resource state or whatever. It doesn't have to be any of those 7 resources. Of course, it can be any resource state. So I got this realization just a few weeks ago that intentionality is the critical aspect or critical what's the word I want? Quality, if you like, of the conscious mind's internal dialogue compared to all the other internal. The other ones just pop up, just come automatically, spontaneously occurring signals automatically from the subconscious programs. Or some will come from the intuition, of course, as well, from other deeper levels too, and they'll have a different quality as well. And the ones that come from the intuition are usually far more peaceful and far more supportive than the ones that come from all the programs that are still needing to be addressed and updated. So this is something I wanted to share that came to my awareness. So each of you would have worked with people at different stages of your journeys. and with yourself with internal dialogue. So have you got any comments, thoughts, or ahas about that particular level of discussion at this stage? I saw you nodding a few times there, Maria.
Yeah, because my last 2 weeks have been very challenging for me. So there's quite a bit of internal dialogue going on. And I realized that I do my best to work with it as soon as I realize it. But of late, the last 2 weeks have been quite intense.
What Nahi did, and she's happy for me to share this because she shared it before with others, is that once she'd processed through quite a lot of stuff that had a lot of internal dialogue as well, of course, she got to a stage where she realized her internal dialogue, her conscious mind's internal dialogue, can be one of the resources. So you can invite your conscious mind's internal dialogue to integrate with all the other resources. So their internal dialogues can communicate with each other, just as through an energy system they can communicate with each other, just through colors and other ways that they communicate. So your internal dialogue becomes a resource state, just as mine did for my discussion with my chronic anxiety state. And that internal dialogue then can dialogue, not always at the conscious level, but you can also do that, with the other internal dialogues that have been coming to the surface. Now that's just another step, another part, another resource that can support working through some of that internal dialogue. And you can play with that and find out how that goes for you.
Good point. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that internal dialogue is being fairly busy for you at the moment suggests to me that you're now ready to address whatever that, not only what they're about, but also to have the resources to make that possible more and more easily. Because another one of my working hypotheses is that whatever we're ready for comes to our awareness, and when it comes to our awareness, we're ready for it, and it's ready for us. The trick is whether we're willing to remember to notice and thank and activate the resources that might be required.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense, yes.
So how's your conscious awareness internal dialogue think? What does it think about becoming a resource state like all the others? Integrating with it.
It hasn't got any problem joining the other resources yet.
Because see, then also it has full access to the internal dialogue of the inner healer, the self-nurture, the intuition, protector, forgive, trust, all of them, right? And it's interesting, it seems to be a requirement to some degree to make that specific request, because I think it comes back down to that free will part of our experience on this planet, that we have the free will to have it happen or not to happen. It's just when it comes to our attention, now that'd be a good idea to do something about that sort of thing.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm processing.
Yeah. I can see it. I can see it processing without any movements whatsoever.
Oh my God. So trying to just wake up and okay. So this is a great way to wake up. Actually, my brain's like, oh my God. So when we're ready to process something that's important, that in the past has taken up this space of monkey mind, it's like trying to process like a wheel on a computer, updating a program. The conscious mind is now aware of what needs to be processed. And it's actually the resources that we call on to be able to provide guidance on how to address that. Right? That's how the resources connect with the primary issues that we're looking to take on.
Yeah. If the resources we've already activated and accessed are capable of addressing that particular issue. I mean, the reason those 7 resources came to my awareness in the order they did was, of course, they came one at a time, each one about 3 or 4 months apart, when suddenly they couldn't do whatever the issue was. So then I asked them what else they needed. And then another resource came available. So some people, they might need motivation as an additional resource, or they may need something else. Now, the 7 in the quantum healing alignment are usually sufficient for the process of the quantum healing alignment. But of course, when you go through the alignment process, it activates lots of other things that also are waiting to be addressed, because the quantum healing alignment is not about addressing everything, it's setting up a mechanism to process those things that need to be addressed effectively. So that's why in the quantum 2, we teach people they can access any other resource they like. So yes, the thing we're ready to address, and what is interesting is when people go through the alignment, all the stuff that needs those 7 resources starts to bubble to the surface. And then when you go through quantum 2 and you put in more resources, and more things bubble to the surface. Right? And then eventually when you realize you can access any resource you want, then things start to bubble to the surface that you have not yet installed resources or activated resources for. So it's like a stepping stone
because they're
process.
looking to heal.
Yeah, everything wants to be addressed. The system wants to be in harmony and balance. The body doesn't want to hurt. The emotions don't want to be in turmoil. The internal dialogue doesn't want to be in total chaos. It simply wants to be addressed. And it can only signal through these spontaneously occurring signals, these SOSs, of imbalance, disharmony, etc.
Yeah. Thank you.
That sort of cover the question sufficiently for now?
Yeah. It's interesting because, if everything is really seeking balance and pleasure and avoiding pain and, I guess, fear for all intent purposes, it kind of makes sense that you'd get reminders to go in that direction. Yeah. It's like emotions to me are just, they're signposts that say, look here for the information you need. And when you don't pay attention, the sign gets bigger and stronger and more intense because, because your body and your mind and emotions really want to be balanced. It has no other way to get your attention than through pain and suffering.
Well, there is, because first of all, they start as whispers, and we often don't pay attention to the whispers. Yeah.
But you have to pay attention to the whispers to avoid the chaos on the back end.
That's right. And eventually, go on.
Not only pay attention, to be able to understand the message is another piece. Because I had a client who was experiencing fatigue, always tired and didn't know where the source of it is. And I didn't no metaphor came up. I didn't know where to start. So I just asked the being to show where should we start the process. And it came to awareness that is in the heart. And then I said okay, thank the heart. And then the sadness came up. Then the emotion is connected to the organ. And so that communication, conscious internal dialogue with the heart, responding in giving that information that the root of this issue is in past life or something like that. So your conscious internal dialogue is able to communicate with any part of your body or emotion or whatever in that space to give answers.
Fascinating.
The understanding is not always essential, but it can certainly be very helpful if that's important for that person. But the system will heal things without the understanding being there at a conscious level necessarily, because the being understands all of it. Right? But for some people, understanding is such a high value that's important that they understand.
Oh, it doesn't have to be understanding of completely of that situation, but knowing what's the next step.
Yeah, that's true.
What is the core issue, digging deeper, is that, interpreting that message that comes in.
Yeah, and how to dig deeper, how to take that next step. Yeah.
And here's what separates the people, I think, who heal from the people who don't, is that the people who heal can sit in their pain long enough to be able to recognize it, address it, accept it, and forgive it and move on. The people who just push that down the minute it pops up, it's like holding a ball down underneath the water. It's, you do have to be able to just look at the pain and, to Agni's example, not only do you have to recognize it and address it, but you have to kind of stick around with that pain or negative emotion long enough to be able to do something with it. Identify what the root cause is. You know, the minute that you feel something and you try and push it down or push it away, it's just continues to be unresolved.
That's right.
But it's judgment. If you avoid that, you judge it as negative part. If you approach this without any judgment, you just acknowledge whatever pain or any body signals as the core thing.
I once had a bad headache around here, very strong headache, and noticing and thinking made no difference. But I just sat with it for 45 minutes. Just sat with it without judging. I just sat with it, and after 45 minutes, suddenly a visual came of this, like a crown, a coronet, really tight on my, been shoved on my head as part of a torture process, some other life. So when that happened, I thanked that. Then the crown was lifted off, but I had to sit with that pain without judgment to allow it to bubble up through whatever it was in between to come to the conscious awareness. It took 45 minutes to do that, rather than trying to push it away, rather than trying to make it wrong, rather than trying to force it to do anything. Just sit with it. And so I've been with some people and they've just sat with something without any other thing happening, simply sitting with whatever the experience was, whether it's an emotion, a pain, just sit with it. And one time I sat with some of my annoyance without doing anything other than simply sat with the annoyance. What didn't take 45 minutes. The annoyance took about, it was a fairly minor issue, took about 3 minutes to process through. And as soon as that processed through, then at the other end of that process was a whole different perspective, different internal dialogue, different resolution possibilities. Yeah.
There's a whole.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. Maria,
Go ahead, Tammy.
There's a whole philosophy around the benefit, I guess, of pain and sitting in a pain body and learning to be able to, I guess it's like a practice of just, you know, sitting in that space and, you know, I guess it's really about surrender and humility and just understanding, you know, the gamut of human emotion and human feeling. And I'll have to go back. I read an article the other day about that. It's like a Buddhist practice of just sitting in your pain and just allowing it to process through and
I
not
think
being afraid of it. I think.
One of Nahid's contact, the person he's working with, he was really working with a lot of pain for a long time. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Nahid, sorry, not Nahid, Agni, correct me if I'm wrong, but once she gave him some experiences of noticing it and then thanking it, knows how it responded, it could work through the pain much more quickly. So the body doesn't actually want to hurt, but if there's no other way and you sit with it, it will eventually process through. But it doesn't want to hurt for that long. And it needs that non-judgment and that gratitude to let it, that's trying to get our attention. Is that right, Agni?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like he was in pain for real, and really in a couple of weeks we kind of cleared that. But what I realized with him, that he had to believe that he has to sit with pain and feel the pain for it to be processed. And like you, Tammy, say, this is the practice. That is, like, I would say that this is the negative aspect of it, because you don't have to sit in pain and be in that for a long time. You, like, it's enough if you acknowledge it, thank it, and it is being released. If there are pathways, like chakra system is the pathway to clear these things out, or through timelines, right?
Or process, so or update the beliefs, or whatever it is. Yeah.
Exactly. So you can clear them a lot faster if you don't get stuck in that, like, I have to feel it. Which, I mean, it has to be balanced, right? There are people who avoid pain. That is not useful either.
But if you have a belief that you've got to feel the pain and you must feel the pain for however long it needs to feel it, well, then you can feel forever.
Yeah,
exactly.
well, because that's a form of denial, really.
Yeah.
In what sense, Tammy, do you see that as a form of denial?
Yeah, well, so when you don't recognize it, accept it, and you're not looking for resources to find a solution for it, then you're almost denying that there is your body's ability to heal itself. You're just kind of accepting it and giving up.
Yeah, denying other possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in a sense, when you deny your body's ability to heal itself, or your, body's ability to heal your mind and your emotions, then you're just a victim to it. Just my thought.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Makes sense.
Mm. Mm. It's good. Okay, anything else about the internal dialogue, or anything else that's come up in this little conversation?
The only thing that what I was going to say just a while ago, which it's interesting that came up in the conversation, because that's what's been coming my way quite a bit of late as well, was when Agni mentioned that something can actually come from a past life. And that's the message that I'm getting very, it's amazing that we're here today and you mention it, because that's basically the message that I've been getting over and over for the last weeks as well, is that there's something back there that it's preventing me to move on.
I've been working in this level for quite a while now. That's the main thing that comes up. I mean, with my clients too. And we just thank whatever. Like I had a client who had the pain in the cheek, like his muscles are like tense and like kind of neurological pain. And we tagged the cheek, and he's like, "Oh my God, it was a woman that slapped me in the face in my past life." And I'm like, "Well, thank her for slapping you." And then the pain was gone, and that's it. So yeah, this kind of experiences are very valid.
No, it's actually quite interesting, because the same way that I met Dick through the kind of the metaphor that I usually use, which is, the universe every now and again send me breadcrumbs so that I can follow, I can find the path for whatever I'm supposed to find.
I'm breadcrumb number 98. Carry on.
No, you're the chocolate house, Dick. You were not the breadcrumb. You were the
all right.
chocolate.
Carry on.
Who is the cherry then?
I don't know. The cherry is probably yet to come.
It's coming.
Or the third cherry, because I've already got the cherries on top of the cake. But anyway, but the idea is that of late, one thing led to the next, and that's where I landed, listening to someone talking about past life regression therapy. And when I start listening so therapy, so not just regressing people for the sake of regressing people, but regressing people in the sense of using whatever comes up as establishing an awareness of where an issue that a challenge that the person is having might come from, and help the person resolve it. And it was actually very interesting, because what drew me to what I was listening to was both the fact, well, the main thing was, first I thought it was very interesting, but when I heard the word resolution, that's when I went like, so that's what, so it was interesting, right? Because, and I keep having that coming up. And the second thing that I keep coming up, which is somehow related, is that your purpose might not be what you think it is. And so, you start asking yourself, shucks, then what is it? Because, so here I am again at the crossroads.
It's a good place to be, then everything is possible.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And
So,
yeah, but
So you might need to do a process of going down parts and down your past with some support.
There,
up to
you know what? It's interesting that in my 5th session, I touched it, right? Because it bubbled up and bubbled up and bubbled up. It's just that we were going to source. We weren't looking at the past lives themselves, right? So, you know, but so much came up. And it was what I needed right there and right then. But there's still more to bubble up.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right. There's, I mean, the fact it's coming to the surface means that you're ready for it. It's ready for you. So, yeah. And you can either take yourself through that process, or you can get somebody to support you through the process either way. So, yeah. Sometimes you do quite a few in one go to one process. If there's several waiting queued up, that can happen too. And sometimes they can then start to generalize through the whole timeline. But there might be some, see, I think what happens is there are some incidents that happen in other lives that require conscious agreement this life to be addressed, and others will process automatically. So.
And often there's the same pattern.
Exactly.
In this, like some behavior pattern this life and multiple past lifetimes or generational stuff.
Which means that, you know, you're absolutely right. I am at this crossroad where I can once and for all get it over and done with. So. But it's also something that I wanted to bring to your awareness because of the journey to source, which is so impactful. But at the same time, for some people, there might be a need of actually go deeper in the access to past lives. Because that can be, you know, where the resolution is. That's
very true. And there have been occasions with some people, we spend more time in the past lives than the rest of the journey. It'll vary with each person, right? Depends what that person's being determines the most important bit on that journey. So for example, for your being said, okay, we'll do the whole journey this time first, and that'll make the other work easier later, is my guess. Whereas with other people, it's almost you've got to jump into this life, do that, then the next life, do that, then the next life, do that. And sometimes it can be a 4 or 5 hour process as well. And that's what makes doing the journey to source such a difficult one in a group process. Because each person has, I mean, Agnes not so certain about this, but
no, well, because the goal of that session is to get the source. That's how I see in this.
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's right. There can be conflicting goals. I mean, the overall goal is still fine, but there may be interim things that make it easier. Some people need to address before they can go there. One guy I took through that journey, he couldn't get past a certain place because, and that was in the very early in this life, because somebody said something to him as a young child that wouldn't let him go beyond that, right? So some sort of religious or some sort of other comment. And so that needed to be thanked and processed before he could then go. And then there were a lot of other stuff on the way as well. So it's a thing you have to make an intuitive guess, or not too much, an intuitive decision between the two persons, the facilitator and the client, if you like, to say, okay, we're going to go into each life at this point, are the ones that need to be going to, or do we go for the whole journey? It's the purpose of that session is to go to the source and for the processing of stuff to be done later on, because really to set up the capability of processing whatever there has been waiting to be processed. That's what the whole quantum one process is technically all about. Self-alignment is setting up all the processing capabilities required, which includes having access to the journey to source energy. But I agree with you. Sometimes it's, I wish I'd done that at that moment in time. Yeah.
You can always go back.
What's that?
You can always go back and do the past life stuff. Just follow the timeline and dip into those points where you need to.
You know, Agni, what sometimes happens to me is when the situations are sort of deep, I cannot access.
Yeah, that's where you need some supportive facilitation. So, for example, with my head cold thing was so much processing, Agni helped me keep my focus, which is great, and then accelerate the process. So I agree. We all need some facilitation at times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, for me, it's only, you know, it's topical. It's when it's deep enough, I can't access it. I just can't.
But I had sessions with the client where I got a vision of what happened, and that helped them to release that. Mm-hmm. So like they were not conscious of the specifics, but thanking that, they felt the result immediately. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you need to, the support in this. Sure.
Yep.
The other thing sometimes for myself, if I'm not sure, if I start to zone out or I can't get there, I ask my being to process while I'm sleeping and dreaming and to give me some sense of what's next or what's resolved during the night, in the morning.
That's also good. Yeah.
So we do have many processing possibilities, but and yet even so, it's useful to have some skillful support. And we've got people in our group that can do that with and for each other. So that's good. That's a good point you make, Maria. I am cognizant of the fact that sometimes there is stuff that comes up in that journey to source that if we could just have more time, even create more time and do that. And with some people, I do that. With some people, for whatever reasons, my being says, no, keep going. So it's just a intuitive.
But like I said, you know, like at that point, that's probably what I needed.
Yeah.
Right. And now there's a next step. That's what it is. But the reason why I'm mentioning it is because maybe in the future, you want to think of the possibility of how it can be actually very beneficial to some people, actually do the past life regression beyond just going to source, right? So I'm not saying that it was I cannot say that it was worthless, obviously.
No, that's right. Yeah, you're right. And we might consider a sixth session where we then
exactly that's my point.
Yeah, we do say, okay, now we've done all this. Is there anything we need to specifically address that came up during those sessions? Something like that. Yeah.
But you know what? It's interesting because that's my point. My point is maybe integrating something like that in the process. But at the same time, if you had asked me that 1 week after we had done the journey to source, I would probably have told you, no, I'm all sorted.
Yeah, that's right. So maybe we just have to say, okay, now something might bubble up in the next week or 2 or 3. There's another session about another session.
Or you know, it can be done like the same way I didn't know what I was in for when I went to the journey to source, right? And it just happened and it had the effect that it did. It can be a 6th section where you do explore the past lives and see what comes up.
More fully, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, it's going to be a discovery session. Not necessarily that the person is aware that there might be something. There might be, there might not be, but yeah. That's right. But it's still, I think it's still worth it. You know, if we come and go all the time and we're coming here to work something, the chances are that's always something that, oh, and by the way, I don't know, I'm just going to share, but what they do in terms of
who's they?
What they do in terms of past life regression. Are you following me?
Yeah. Who's they?
Oh, okay.
Who's the they?
Well, people that do past life regression therapy, for example, is that there's always the setting of an intention. So there is always the setting of an intention, meaning like a desired outcome. So what would be an area of your life or something, an issue that you would like to, and from that point of view, it can be very interesting then to do the past life regression in the sense of that's the desired outcome and that's what you want to resolve, which then also
but it's interesting. That's very interesting because sometimes your desired outcome may not be your being's desired outcome.
exactly, there we go, it's true, very good, there you go, that's why, you know, that's why these conversations are so meaningful, because yeah, exactly, now you say it and I can see it perfectly.
I remember one time Agni was
But
saying,
it will always, yeah.
John Agni.
What was I gonna say? No, I'm just saying, like, it will always take you to the point that you have to be, because
Exactly.
like so many times I want to work on like finances or something, and it takes me to resolve some past trauma or some past life situation. It is never directly connected
Exactly.
to what I wanted to work on, but is always a next step in resolving that issue. It's like connecting the dots in that mosaic, you know.
I remember you, Agni, you were telling me one of your clients wanted to resolve some issues about a business, and us being said, no, you've got to resolve your issues about within your relationship. Right? It doesn't mean the relationship was bad, but there were relationship things that in that area prevented her being successful in business in an indirect sort of way. Right? So, but you're right, even if you set the intention, your being will still take you where you need to go. But it's interesting. Yeah.
Well, it can, again, we can go specific or non-specific, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Right?
Yeah, that's right. Very true. Very true.
And it's interesting because, again, as we're saying, someone can come with a specific desired outcome, right? And one of the prompts at the beginning of the process can actually be allow your being to show you what needs to be addressed, which is most beneficial to you, for example, right? And again, so we might come in with something and land in something else, because our being will know where to take us, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, one person I worked with the other day, she wanted to work on her weight, amongst other things. And we've been doing a bit of that, but the big takeaway for her was that what you focus on and what you get. In other words, you don't think of a green elephant, you'll think of a green elephant. So you're just constantly thinking what you shouldn't be doing as opposed to what you should be doing. That was the biggest takeaway. And that's generative. Like, that's not just on one particular thing in terms of weight, it's about lots of aspects of life. That's basically a meta program, an away from program compared to a toward program. And that was like a switch in her head when to looking at that. So, but again, you know, as John Grinder agrees, and the people who do EDMR agrees, there is a design inbuilt program within us to work towards resolution. And as long as we are alert, mindful, noticing the steps and follow the steps that come up, that'll take us there.
Makes all the sense in the world. Yeah, but just, you know, just sharing it and living out there, that it might be a good 6th section.
Yeah, good idea. Good idea. We'll put that, because I already built in an extra possible 6th session anyway as part of the package if it's needed. We might just so maybe that was sitting there as a sort of little backstop for this discussion.
Which program are we discussing that we're adding a 6th session to?
The quantum healing, the QH1, the
QH1 adding a 6th session.
After Journey to Source, we actually have another session to allow it depends on how it's structured, but to allow time, to give time and experience to process anything that is now accessible to process. It wasn't before you had all that set up in the Quantum 1 process. It doesn't have to be immediately a week before. It might be a good idea to maybe have it 2 weeks afterwards to give a bit more time to process.
That's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea, because then people can start almost reviewing the QH process over again from the beginning, and now experientially kind of going through it with these new issues. So that they're actually not learning it as much as they're experiencing it on the new issue they identified a couple of weeks later. I think that's a terrific idea. And the thing that I'm starting, so some of the clients that come to me, they're mainstream clients that just want more surface kind of support. So I'm always starting with them now with their belief system. It's the first worksheet I give them, because here's what I know for sure. I can, for example, teach people how to get in shape, how to lose weight, how to be healthy. But if they've got somewhere a belief system that's so strongly rooted in being, for whatever reason, at a certain weight will make me not safe, and intimacy is not safe, there's no plan I can recommend for them that will override their belief program. And it's amazing to me how few human beings sit down and take an inventory of what they authentically believe and why they believe it. So just pointing people to spaces,
most of their beliefs are subconscious.
like that is interesting.
Most of people's beliefs are subconscious, Tammy.
How do you help people take any kind of inventory around what they believe so they can then address those issues to move forward with all the mainstream functioning? I mean, is that just literally the ask? Just asking?
Yeah, asking questions. It's meta-model questioning and listening to what they're saying too. See, when that very first post I did of the lady with a brick wall, it was actually the metaphor came up that was needed to be addressed, not so much a belief. So beliefs represent metaphors, I suppose, and you can address them either way. But when you listen to people, you will hear in their words their beliefs. So,
but don't the metaphors represent the beliefs, not the other way around? When people have a metaphor, it represents something they believe.
Well, metaphors include beliefs, and within the metaphor structure, there are beliefs and there are values and there are resources and all sorts of things. The metaphor is the whole story. Is a story which includes beliefs. So you can address them from either angle. It doesn't actually matter. And in the quantum process, in the two, we teach people to start updating beliefs, but they've got to be aware of how to access the beliefs in the first place, to recognize them. And they need to start listening to what they're actually saying. Most people don't listen to themselves. Maria.
Can I just share something as well? Very often you can get to their limiting or disempowering beliefs based on emotion. And I'm going to give an example, right? Last week I had someone that I was working with, and she was saying that she would get very upset with her sister in a certain situation. So what I did was I drilled the emotion to understand why would you be upset? Okay, because she does this, and what does it mean to you? Because and what does that mean to you? And at the bottom there was the limiting belief, which was that she's not valid. So that's why she was getting upset.
She herself was not valid.
She saw herself as not valid. So when her sister would, for example, because it was that situation, it was a sister emphasizing the fact or singling out the fact that she hadn't put the dishes away. And she would get irritated with her sister picking on her. So when I started digging into why do you get upset? Okay, what does that mean? So we went from, I usually go from layer to layer until we get, so when I asked, and what does that mean at some point, the last thing or what came up was, I'm not valid. That means I'm not valid, which is another way of saying I'm not good enough. She came to the point of saying I'm inexistent.
Non-existent.
So that's the belief. There you go. That's the belief.
And that's the representation she had in her mind, that her sister didn't validate her. Therefore she wasn't valid. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, but what triggers her is the subconscious belief that when her sister treats her like that, she's actually what it means subconsciously is that she's not valid. She's not good enough. Right. So through emotions you can also get to and I often do that. With my sister, it was the same thing. Why would she have road rage? Same thing. We got to the same belief.
Yep.
They don't respect me. What does that mean? I'm not. They
valid.
don't see me. What does that mean? So
it's interesting. It's an interesting one, that, because a couple of times when in my family here, my extended family and household family, because it's a whole different culture, some things that are important to me are not important to them at all, right?
Exactly.
And I've got to be very careful that I don't read that as they're invalidating me, they're just validating their culture. And I've got to make sure that I validate myself, because really when we get back down to it, we've got to validate ourselves, right? And then whatever they do might annoy us or irk us a bit, but it doesn't invalidate us inside. So it gets back then down to resourcefulness as well as belief updates.
Exactly. But I also usually part of the process is asking, what else could it mean? Okay, so that's what it means to you, but what else could it be? Imagine that you're a third person and you're looking, you're having a look at this situation. What do you think it's happening? What else could it be that is happening? And they come up with more other beliefs that are possible.
Yeah.
Okay?
So you're using the first position, second position, third position. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they cover that? Sorry, Maria. Did they cover that in your NLP, Tammy? The first position, second position, third position?
They went over it briefly.
Yeah.
But not in a lot of detail.
Okay, so the first position is where this person's feeling these emotions and feeling invalidated and see that she's not valid. The second position is her sister's position. And the third position is an observer. What would an observer think as they observe this situation? So you take a person through those three positions, then you start exploring what's in there, and sort of unpacking it all. But it's a good point, as you make, Maria, that the emotions will be covering or signaling about a belief system through a behavioral experience, emotional experience. Excuse me.
It's a brilliant thing to do. And Maria, you should really be commended that, I think a lot of times when we're working people, we stop when we think we have the answer. And it's always so important to continue to ask questions. So as, the coach, you really are positive what the issue is. Because sometimes people are going to give you like a surface answer, but when you do ask different questions and look at it from different perspectives, it can shift. So yay, brilliant.
It was interesting.
Go on, Maria.
No, I'm just going to wrap up, which is it was interesting because then we worked on two different situations and we came down to the same conclusion, right? And it's very interesting because you were just saying a while ago, someone came because of the business, but at the end of the day, it was the relationship. And those two things, funny enough, are very often connected, and as well as the money issue and the relationship issue. And what happens was that we worked on both. She had this situation with a sister, and she also had a belief about money. When we started digging both of them, we came to the same conclusion. The belief was the same. So her conclusion, her haha moment was, oh my God, I've been hanging to this belief. Poor thing, she was saying 29 years. And I said, really? Oh my God, that's really bad. How am I supposed to feel? But anyway, so she said, oh, I've been hanging to this belief for 29 years. And it's the same thing. And I said, yeah, it seems so. And she said, oh my God. So she on that particular session, because we were just doing the digging, she left with awareness, right? So we still haven't addressed the belief.
And maybe the resources required, yeah. I think it's useful to remember that beliefs and resources are go hand in hand, yeah.
Absolutely.
In the Quantum 2 program, we teach them one at a time, but in a therapeutic intervention, you work with them,
Most definitely. Very often when I'm working with a belief, for example, sometimes we don't get to a new belief, we get to a resource. So
Requirement.
it's the resource that is installed.
Yeah.
So the first time that happened to me, and it happened early on, I was like, sort of in shock. What do I do here? But then I said, okay, there's a resource, let's install the resource. And then I got it because we actually talked about it. And we said, yes, because the person needed a resource to overcome the limiting belief.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Absolutely. Sometimes you end up in a resource before the person can actually access a new belief. So,
That's right.
you know, go with the territory.
And so same with if your person doesn't feel validated or they feel non-existent, they need a validation or existence resource, maybe. Yeah.
So we'll see where it takes us in the next session. But yes, that's. I just wanted to.
But I still come back to the point. If you can actually access the metaphor, which a metaphor encapsulates beliefs and resources within the story of the metaphor, and you update the metaphor, automatically beliefs and resources update as well. Right. So the metaphor is actually, I think, the fastest and most comprehensive update process. But you don't always get access to an overall metaphor. But I've noticed a couple of times I work with people, once we got the metaphor, we went there, then and beliefs start to update, resources start to update in that process, generatively.
True. Yeah.
Now, just getting back to your earlier comment, when you started asking questions, which I think is very, very useful, what would happen instead of asking questions each time you came with an answer? What would happen if you asked her to thank that answer?
Thank and notice, yes.
Yeah, would that give you a different response, you think, than asking more questions?
That's actually a good point. That's actually a good point. And it could, but it's something that I can do one of these days. I will do it side by side. Let's say I work one.
Interesting experiment.
I didn't. You see, there we go. So we're talking, and it's a good idea because I could have done one way and the other one a different way and see what happened. But yeah, one of these days I'll do that. So the next opportunity that I get,
because I think our questions that we come up with tend to suggest a particular direction from the question. Maybe not. Whereas when we ask them to thank what they're noticing, then they're being come up with the next step as opposed to what the question might lead them to. I'm just leaving those an open possibility, right? I mean, some questions are very open-ended questions and some questions are quite directive questions. So it depends on the nature of the question as well, probably. Yeah.
No, the question that I ask is always the same. What does that mean? That's all I ask. What does that mean?
Okay, so going for meaning.
So,
well,
yeah,
okay. So explore if you're going to remember to do so. Explore just the noting thanking process as a parallel, if you like, where the opportunity arises. Just notice what the difference is. I mean, it's all experiment. I mean, our whole journey with this whole process is constantly experimenting, constantly learning. Agni, looks like you're just about ready to zone out.
I know. I should be going.
Yeah, I think it's probably time to wrap up. I just want to mention that tomorrow we've got the Meta Club NLP Coffee Meta Club, where Christine will be leading a discussion on low energy, lack of energy, all that sort of stuff, which would be very interesting. And so if you can make that, folks, it'd be a fascinating conversation.
What is the timer? Can you remind?
Timing for my end, I think it's 11 p.m. Let's have a quick look. It's fairly late.
Which means what? 4 o'clock? It's 3 or 4. What's the time by you now, Dick, please?
Right now it's
just 4 for you, Maria.
Just past 8 o'clock.
Okay, so it's 8-hour difference. So it's yeah, it's my 4. No, it's my 3 o'clock. Yeah, 3 p.m.
Yeah, 11 p.m. my time. So yeah.
Do we get the Zoom link for that?
Sorry again.
I'll get the Zoom.
Again, Tammy.
We'll get the Zoom link for that. We
Yeah,
just can click on that.
Yeah,
We're all invited.
It'll be yes, you are all invited to be in the NLP Coffee Club chat group, which you're all members of. Yeah. Or at least I invited you. Yeah. it'll probably be most likely be our group, because of the people that were Laura's side, who unfortunately passed away. Christine's the only one that came last time. Susanna arrived late because she mismanaged the time, and Lou didn't turn up, and the others are self-selected out. So if that continues to be so, then I think what I'll eventually do is invite Christine to join this group here, not have a second group, because she's very keen. She's just finished the alignment, quite likely join us in a training type associate situation. Very skilled, and I think she'd be a good member of the group. But we'll do with the coffee club this time, see how it goes. And it's not a therapy session, not a training session. It's simply a discussion, collegiate discussion session, a bit like this, our mastermind groups here, where we bring to our awareness new ways of thinking, other possibilities, just a good collegiate discussion. Yeah. Okay. All right.
All right.
Anything else before we wrap it up?
Could I just have one topic possibly for another time together, and that's really dreaming. And I've been waking up every morning with this. It's not a disturbing thing, but it's like an agitated thought. And every morning I wake up with it. And at night I'm like, don't wake up with that. And I meditate to not wake up with that. I wake up with that. So if we could do dreaming, and just wanting to get rid of this pesky, annoying thing.
You're doing the green elephant thing, Tammy.
Yeah.
You're not telling her what you want to have instead.
Yeah.
Huh?
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna change my little nighttime meditation.
Little request.
And it is interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting when you focus on what you want, how much more powerful that it is than you focus on what you don't want to have happen.
Well, if you keep asking things not to happen, they'll keep happening, because that's what you're asking. That's what you're focusing on, right? So it's a little lesson in the green elephant story. That's what it is.
Okay. Good point. Thanks.
And you can give us some feedback on the next night of sleep and tell us how it was when we meet tomorrow, perhaps.
Tweak my nighttime meditation.
Yeah. Okay, folks. Thanks very much. Catch you again soon next one. Thanks very much.
Bye, Maria. Bye, Ivy.
And thanks to all of you for a great interactive discussion. It's been great.
Thanks, Dick. Have a good day. Evening.
Okay, guys. See you tomorrow or Sunday, correct? Because there's something Sunday as well. Right?
Yes.
Well, next week. Yes, following week. Yeah.
This Sunday.
Yeah. There we go. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.